She stood outside the towering glass building, tiny hands clutched tightly around a worn stuffed bunny. Her oversized hoodie barely covered the bruises of poverty, scuffed shoes, messy hair, and the kind of quiet sadness that only children of hardship carry in their eyes. People rushed past her, important adults in expensive suits, paying no mind to the little girl standing alone. But she wasn't just waiting, she was gathering courage. Tucked in her pocket was a picture. A drawing, really, of her mom, and a man she had never met, a daddy she had imagined in crayon, wearing a tie and smiling. Inside the building was a man she had seen on a billboard. She didn't know what a CEO was, but she heard grown-ups whisper his name with awe and fear. She'd followed him for 3 mornings now, watched how the guards opened doors for him, how his car waited like a king's chariot. To her, he looked exactly like the daddy in her drawing. Sharp suit, strong jaw, eyes that didn't blink much. He was tall and serious, everything a fairy tale protector should be. So today, she made up her mind. She would ask him, just for one day, to pretend. As he stepped out of the revolving doors, phone in hand, bodyguards flanking him, she stepped into his path like a whisper of wind. The guards moved instantly, but the CEO raised a hand, more annoyed than curious. His brows furrowed at the small figure looking up at him with big, pleading eyes. "Sir," she said softly, her voice trembling, "could you pretend to be my daddy, just for one day?" The air went still. The guards exchanged awkward glances. The CEO stared at her, clearly thinking it was some kind of prank or publicity stunt. But her eyes, wide, glassy, completely sincere, said, "Otherwise." He said nothing at first, just stared. His schedule was packed, he was running late, and he didn't do soft-hearted nonsense, as he liked to call it. But something in her expression, something so heartbreakingly on him, she wasn't smiling, she wasn't begging for toys or candy, she just looked tired. "Where is your mother?" he asked gruffly. "At the hospital," she replied. She said, "Daddies make you brave when you feel scared. And I have to be brave tomorrow." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. That shattered him more than tears ever could. Before he realized it, he had told his driver to cancel a meeting, told his assistant to clear his calendar until noon. He didn't understand what he was doing. This wasn't him. He had empires to run, markets to dominate, but for some reason, he found himself walking beside a little girl, holding his hand tightly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And deep down, for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, something terrifying. He felt needed. He told himself, it was just one day, a simple act of charity, one child, one favor. Then he'd return to his world of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. But as he sat beside her in the small hospital room, watching her brush her mother's hair and whisper, "Don't worry, Daddy came with me today," something inside him cracked. Her mother was unconscious, tubes attached to her frail frame, yet the little girl smiled as if everything would be okay now that he was there. He wasn't prepared for the lump in his throat. He had attended funerals with less emotion than this. Went to the park after the hospital visit. She held his hand like she'd known it forever, skipped ahead, told him stories about her bunny, about how brave her mom was, and how she sometimes imagined she had a family like the ones in cartoons. "But I don't need a real daddy forever," she said innocently. "Just someone kind, just for today." Her words hit him harder than any business loss. This child wasn't demanding love, she was borrowing it. And it made him realize how empty his own life was, surrounded by yes men, fake smiles, and hollow success. His driver looked at him strangely when he asked to cancel the rest of the day's meetings. It wasn't like him. Damon Wolf was known for being cold, calculated, and obsessed with efficiency. But here he was, carrying a pink backpack while holding cotton candy in one hand and a paper crown in the other. When she called him daddy, in front of a street vendor, he didn't correct her. He didn't even flinch. Something about the way she smiled made it feel right, as if it wasn't pretending anymore. That evening, as he dropped her off at the tiny apartment building she called home, she handed him a hand-drawn picture. In it, she stood in the middle, her mother in bed behind her, and him taller than the building, wearing a suit and smiling, one hand holding her and the other shielding her from a storm. "This is you," she said proudly. "Because today, you made the sky less scary." He took the paper slowly, unable to speak. No boardroom deal, no Forbes cover, no investment win had ever made him feel this way, seen, real, human. He walked away before she could see the emotion breaking across his face. But he didn't go far. He sat in the back of his car staring at that drawing for what felt like hours. One day was supposed to be enough. One day was supposed to be simple. But nothing about this little girl or the way she looked at him with quiet trust was simple. He had promised to walk away. But deep inside, he knew he couldn't. Not now. Not ever. He told his assistant not to question him when he asked for the girl's address. It's for charity, he muttered, though even he didn't believe it. That night, instead of going to a luxury gala, he found himself parked outside the old building where she lived. The walls were cracked, the windows fogged with dust. He watched the lights in her apartment flicker. And for a man who lived among glass towers and endless wealth, this fragile warmth felt more honest than anything he'd ever known. He told himself he was just checking in, just one more time, but he didn't leave. The next morning, he returned to drop off groceries, to ensure her mother had medication, to see her smile again. She ran down the stairs barefoot and hugged his leg, like she had been waiting for him. "I knew you'd come back, Daddy," she whispered. That single sentence shattered his self-control. She didn't know he was the type of man people feared. To her, he was a hero, a protector, someone who mattered. He had never mattered to someone like this, and he couldn't look away now. Days turned into weeks. He started adjusting his schedule around her. His board noticed his distraction. Shareholders complained about his missed meetings, and headlines questioned his sudden disappearances. He didn't care. Each evening he found himself at her side, whether it was fixing a broken curtain rod or attending a school event where other kids giggled as she held his hand. He didn't belong there. He knew it. But she made him feel like he did. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked once, sitting on the curb beside him, legs swinging. He didn't answer, because he didn't know. The more time he spent near her, the more she crawled under his skin and into his heart. She was nothing like the world he knew. She didn't care about his money, his name, or the empire he'd built. She only cared that he showed up, that he kept his promises, that when she fell, he was there to pick her up. And with each passing day, he began to fear something he never had before. The thought of losing her, this little girl and her fragile, broken life, had become his anchor. She had reminded him of what it meant to be human, and that terrified him. One day, she handed him a note, childlike handwriting, full of crooked letters and scribbled hearts. It read, "If you ever want to stop being my pretend daddy, just say so. I understand, but I hope you don't." His hands trembled as he read it, because what she didn't know was that he couldn't stop Evan if he tried. What had started as pretending had become something far more dangerous. He needed her more than she would ever need him. It was a rainy Saturday when she said it. They were sitting on the living room floor, coloring pictures and eating instant noodles, her idea of a fancy dinner. Outside, the storm tapped softly on the window pane, but inside, laughter echoed as she painted his tie bright green. Her mother, still recovering, had fallen asleep on the worn-out couch nearby. For a man used to glassware, imported wine, and silent penthouse meals, this moment felt oddly perfect. She leaned into him with her little head resting on his chest, and whispered, "You're not my real daddy, but I wish you were." He froze. Her words didn't come from a place of fantasy anymore. They weren't part of a pretend game. She meant them. In her eyes, he wasn't the cold billionaire who never smiled in public. He was just the man who showed up when no one else did. And for the first time, Damon Wolf didn't know how to respond. His chest tightened, a strange ache blooming inside him. He had never considered being anyone's father, never dreamed of it, but now, the idea of someone else stepping into that role of her, replacing him, filled him with a kind of panic he didn't understand. Later that night, as she slept with her arms wrapped around his gift, a new stuffed bear, with a tie like his, he sat in silence beside her bed. He looked around at the cracked walls, the flickering lights, the humble warmth of their home. It was a far cry from his world, and yet, he had never felt more at peace. Her mother had begun to suspect something, watching the way he lingered, the way his eyes followed the child with quiet protectiveness. She said nothing, but her gaze had changed, from grateful to guarded. The child, unaware of the tension growing, kept pulling him deeper into her life. "Daddy, can you come to my class for Parents' Day?" she asked shyly one morning. His heart skipped. He had a global conference that day, but when he looked at her eyes, full of hope, he knew he couldn't say no. When he walked into that schoolroom, dressed in his tailored suit among middle-class parents and hand-painted decorations, he saw the pride in her face, and for once, He didn't care about reputation. He only cared that she was smiling. But as the line between pretend and reality faded, so did the distance between hearts. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was becoming something more to her mother, and, dangerously, to himself. Every time she called him daddy, something deep inside him answered. He started wondering what it would be like if this wasn't temporary, if she was truly his. But that thought was dangerous, because the truth still remained. He wasn't her father. He was a stranger with power, secrets, and now, a heart slowly slipping out of his own control. He had just picked her up from school when it happened. She ran to him like always, backpack bouncing, arms outstretched. He lifted her into the air and spun her gently, his heart full, his soul tethered to this tiny human in ways he couldn't explain. But before they reached the car, a voice cut through the warm air, low, uncertain, broken. Lily. They both turned. Standing at the school gates was a man, scruffy, tired-looking eyes, sunken from years of absence. The child froze in Damon's arms. Her tiny voice trembled, "Daddy." Damon's world tilted. The man stumbled forward, arms half-raised. "It's me. It's your real dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I've been looking for you and your mom." She looked between them, confused. The man was a stranger, but his voice stirred something in her. Damon gently set her down. His hands clenched at his sides, fury rising not out of jealousy, but fear. Fear of losing the only light that had warmed the cold corridors of his heart. He remained silent as Lily walked slowly toward the man. Her eyes scanned him, uncertain, hopeful. The reunion was brief and awkward. Her mother was shocked when the man followed them home. Tears were shed, old wounds reopened. He had disappeared years ago, left when their daughter was a baby, drowning in addiction and excuses. But now, he was clean, employed, and desperate to fix what he'd broken. Damon watched from a corner as Lily hugged him cautiously. The little girl who had once drawn Damon as a hero in a suit was now holding hands with the man who'd abandoned her. The world Damon had built quietly, carefully, was starting to slip from his grasp. He tried to act unaffected, but the pain was undeniable. Every time he saw them together, something inside him cracked. He wasn't her blood. He had no right. And yet, he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after the school plays, the bedtime stories, the laughter. He knew her favorite color, the songs she hummed in her sleep, the way she held her bunny when scared. Her real father might have shared her DNA, but Damon had shared her days. Her first memories of safety were with him, not the man who had returned like a ghost trying to rewrite a past he had abandoned. One night, as Damon stood outside their apartment building watching the light flicker from her window, Lily came to the glass and waved. He smiled weakly. Then her father stepped in behind her, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. Damon's smile faded. The image burned into his soul, a reminder that no matter how much love he gave, there were things he could never be. He had entered their lives as a stranger, pretending to be a father. But somewhere along the way, he had stopped pretending and started hoping. And now, that hope was tearing him apart. Lily stood in the hallway clutching her bunny, her wide eyes moving between the two men standing silently in front of her. One wore a suit and tie, his eyes always calm but heavy, like they carried the weight of the world. The other wore a flannel shirt and hopeful regret, hands shaking as he tried to make up for years lost. Her real father had been around more these last few days, trying, learning, showing up. Damon, the man who had been her everything for weeks, now stood slightly apart, his usually controlled face unreadable, but his silence louder than any cry. Her mother sat on the couch, torn between the past that broke her and the present that kept her alive. She loved Damon's stability, his care, the way he made Lily laugh without trying. But the return of Lily's real father stirred emotions she'd buried long ago. And now, Lily had questions. Innocent, impossible questions. "Can I keep both daddies?" she asked once, her voice full of childish hope. The room had gone still. Damon had looked away. Her real father had forced a smile, but the pain in his eyes said he knew the answer too. The school was holding a family picnic day, a small event, but to Lily, it was everything. She wanted both men to come. But the school had a rule, only one registered guardian per child. Damon had found that detail by accident in the email. The rule didn't matter to most, but to him, it shattered everything. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed for what felt like the 100th time, She whispered, "Will you be the one to come with me, please?" Her real father stood quietly outside the door, listening, and Damon's heart broke in silence. Later, Damon walked outside with the child's father. There were no fights, no threats, just pain. "She's yours," Damon finally said, voice rough, "by blood, by name, and you've come back. But don't ever forget who held her hand when she had no one." The man nodded, his eyes glistening. "You gave her the heart I lost." Damon nodded once, then walked away. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't ask for anything in return, but every step away from that apartment felt like walking out of his own home, because for the first time in his life, it had felt like home. The morning of the picnic, Lily stood at the window again, waiting, hoping. She believed, maybe foolishly, that the man in the suit would show up like he always did, that he would never break a promise. But this time, he didn't, and her real father stood beside her, holding her hand with uncertainty. She smiled for him, but her eyes kept drifting to the street, searching for the shadow that had once become her light. And somewhere across the city, a man stared at a crayon drawing in his office drawer, knowing that walking away was the kindest thing he'd ever done and the cruelest. Weeks passed. The city moved on, but Damon couldn't. He went back to his world of boardrooms, mergers, and soulless success, but everything felt empty. His penthouse, once sleek and perfect, now echoed with silence. The drawing she gave him stayed locked in his top drawer, but he saw it every morning. The green tie, the storm clouds, she said. He chased a weight, haunted him. He had walked away, for her, for what he thought was right. But in doing so, he realized he had left the only part of his life that had ever felt real. Across the city, Lily smiled more now. Her real father was trying. He showed up to school. He brought her snacks. He helped with homework. But something was missing. Even in her brightest moments, her eyes searched for someone who wasn't there. One night, as she clutched her stuffed bunny, she whispered to her mother, "I think my pretend daddy is sad. Do you think he's okay?" Her mother paused, heart aching. "I think he's missing you too, sweetheart," she replied. And Lily, with the wisdom only a child could possess, said softly, "Maybe he needs me to come find him now." So she did. With her mother's help, she wrote a letter, in crayon this time, but carefully, seriously. She didn't ask him to come back. She just told him she missed him, that she still remembered how he tied her shoes and wiped her tears and made her brave. The letter was hand-delivered to his office. He opened it during a board meeting. He didn't speak. He just stood and walked out, the letter shaking in his hand. For the first time in years, Damon Wolfe canceled everything. Not because he was broken, but because he wanted to be whole. That when he arrived at the parkway,